Coming up on Talking Points, chaos continues in the Middle East. We'll have the latest on the Israel-Hamas war.
And another mass shooting in the U.S. will have a deeper dive into the missed opportunities to stop the main shooter.
Plus, a few shakeups on the 2024 campaign trail. Who joined the race and who dropped out? This and more. Talking Points starts right now. Good evening and welcome into Talking Points. I'm Jake Morel.
And I'm Olivia Maniscalco. We are monitoring the new developments in the Israel-Hamas war, where Israel has begun its second phase of offensive attacks in Gaza.
There's a lot to unpack here. Let's bring in Talking Points anchor Erica Love. Erica, what are the latest developments out of the Middle East?
Yes, Jake, thank you. It is now day 23 of the war between Hamas and Israel with no turning point in sight. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has allowed Israeli ground forces to enter Gaza and move forward with a more direct and first-hand approach to Hamas terrorists. The Prime Minister rejected calls for a ceasefire. In a press conference earlier today, he added that, quote, Israel will fight until the battle is won, end quote. He dismissed calls from his political opponents urging for his resignation. At this point, the Prime Minister is still refusing to call it an invasion in the first place, opting to only address it as a multi-staged campaign. Along the Gaza Strip, internet connections and phone lines, which are controlled by Israel, according to the U.S. government, went down this weekend. Although it is unclear what the next steps are, the Israeli military is obligated by the laws of war under the Geneva Conventions to protect civilians in Gaza. But let's transition more to what the world is saying in response to this campaign in the last few days. The surrounding countries in the region are all at odds as many leaders struggle to pick a side. And the U.S. is taking serious defense of Israel after last week when the USS Carney, a missile destroyer, shot down 3 cruise missiles and several drones launched by Iranian-backed rebel forces in Yemen on the grounds that they were potentially heading for targets in Israel. Let's take a look at this map of the region and at all the countries that are essentially being drawn into the conflict. Take a look at this map. Of all of the countries, there are bigger concerns, of course, with Iran and Turkey working to boost resources for Hamas than this small area at the top of Egypt called the Rafah, being used as a vessel for humanitarian aid over the last couple of days. But there's also the looming possibility of Hezbollah becoming more involved as the campaign continues, where they have forces operating in Lebanon and Syria. That's already 6 countries who have direct ties to the war, and that's not even counting Russian involvement. And many international organizations like the United Nations are choosing to advocate for the victims on both sides. Antonio Guterres, the UN Security General, has appealed on the X platform for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, also for the unconditional release of hostages and the delivery of aid to Gaza, where he says a humanitarian catastrophe is unfolding in front of our eyes. He added that he was surprised by the unprecedented escalation of bombardments, undermining humanitarian objectives, which seems to be the sentiment for President Biden as well. President Biden also urged the importance of continuing to provide humanitarian aid to the region while also securing the release of American hostages that are being held by Hamas. When speaking to President Abbas of the Palestinian Authority last week during his trip to the region, this is what was reiterated.
The United States remains committed to the Palestinian people's right to dignity and to self-determination. The actions of Hamas terrorists don't take that right away. Like so many other, I'm heartbroken by the tragic loss of Palestinian life, including the explosion at the hospital in Gaza, which was not done by the Israelis. We mourn every innocent life lost. We can't ignore the humanity of innocent Palestinians who only want to live in peace and have an opportunity.
Biden said during a White House briefing that Hamas and Russia represent different threats, but they share the same goal, that they, quote, both want to completely annihilate a neighboring democracy, end quote. This also comes after representatives from Hamas in Iran met with Russian diplomats in Moscow this weekend. The Russian Foreign Ministry said that they discussed the release of hostages in the Gaza Strip and the evacuation of foreigners. This still raises concerns for the U.S. government as attacks by Iranian-connected groups continue within the region. The U.S. is familiar with this types of weaponry Iran can possibly be providing Hamas based off of Iran's history with supplying militants in Iraq in the past. In other surrounding countries with U.S. military bases, we are seeing preparations in place for more attacks from Iran-connected militant groups. U.S. bases and personnel in the Middle East have been targeted in a slew of drone and missile attacks since October 17th, especially those American personnel based in Iraq and Syria. According to the Pentagon, there have now been at least 19 attacks on U.S. bases and personnel in Iraq and Syria since October 17th, including 3 last Thursday. The U.S. plans to send 900 more troops to the region to assist with air defense and intelligence collection. As the war continues, it is still uncertain how President Biden will choose to balance its support for Israel while prioritizing victims, both American and otherwise, across the region.
Erica, thank you. Now, Erica, you said it. It is just getting more difficult for the president to decipher how to aid our ally Israel while also taking account all of the innocent lives being lost on both sides. I mean, in Congress, more and more people are starting to question whether we should be giving all of this aid to Israel or whether we should focus more on humanitarian efforts for both sides. But really, both Biden and Blinken acknowledge that Gaza needs to be able to receive humanitarian aid, but as the days go on, it's just getting harder and harder for the president to figure out what to do.
Absolutely, Olivia, and it's going to become a bigger problem here at home for President Biden. We've already seen the far left part of the Democratic Party start to split from Biden on the issue of this Israel-Hamas war. A lot of them saying that Biden is doing too much to support Israel and he's not condemning inhumane things that they're doing to the citizens of Gaza. So Biden's starting to lose support from, a good chunk of his party, and that's going to become a big political issue rolling into 2024. We've already seen it discussed in Republican debates. We've seen it discussed in forums. We've seen different congressmen call on President Biden to do more to help Gaza. And it's going to be interesting rolling into 2024, seeing how much Biden will lean into that, and also at the risk of losing some of the independent voters. But that's the other thing, is it's not necessarily totally a bipartisan issue, but it'll be very interesting to see going into 2024 what he decides to do and what position he decides to take and how he can sort of ride that line of keeping the support of the Democrats, but also still attracting independents to win re-election in 2024.
Yeah, exactly. And he's also balancing how much aid to give to Ukraine. Really just the foreign aid from President Biden and the rest of Congress has been on the minds of many.
Absolutely, Olivia. And the conflict in the Middle East has also caused a rise in anti-Semitic incidents across the country. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre expressed concerns about a rise in threats at schools in the U.S. She said the administration is tracking these incidents closely and meeting with Jewish leaders to discuss what they're going to do.
These incidents are affecting one college campus down I-81. Anonymous anti-Semitic comments were posted on Cornell's Greek Rank website. One of the comments threatened a shooting at Cornell's Center for Jewish Life and Kosher Dining Hall. New York Governor Kathy Hochul visited the university this morning. There she held a press conference and spoke with Jewish students on campus. Hochul says she will do everything in the state's power to make Jewish students feel safe on college campuses. Take a listen.
We will not tolerate threats or hatred or anti-Semitism or any kind of hatred that makes people feel vulnerable and exposes people and makes them feel insecure in a place that they should be enjoying their campus life without fear.
Hochul also says the state is taking these threats seriously and has launched an investigation with the FBI. She also noted that police are continuing to ramp up security efforts on college campuses and Jewish centers around the state following Hamas's attack on Israel. We'll continue to monitor this story here on CitrusTV.
18 people are dead after a shooting rampage in Maine last week. How authorities missed the opportunity to stop the shooter. Next on Talking Point.
I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Welcome back to Talking Points. 18 people are dead and 13 injured. For many in the town of Lewiston, Maine, those aren't just numbers but names. Names of friends, sons, daughters. That small town rocked by the latest mass shooting to happen in this country, the 565th this year. Tonight, the community continues its healing process, but there are so many questions and concerns that remain. Talking Points anchor Chile Adeli joins us now. Chile, we know police found the body of suspect Robert Card Friday night. What do we know about his past and how he gained access to this weapon?
Well, Olivia, that part you mentioned about how he gained access to a weapon is very interesting here. So police say that Robert Card legally purchased a rifle days before this attack, but they believe right now he did use it in the mass shooting. That's something that hasn't been fully confirmed yet. But the loophole around it, why he was able to buy a weapon like this, he was never involuntarily committed to a mental health institution and hence wasn't stopped from purchasing firearms. Now, it is interesting. 3 months ago, Card did try to buy a silencer for a rifle per a gun store owner, but he checked off a box that basically incriminated him, saying that he was in a mental institution at the time, and the gun store owners and the staff there did not let him buy one. So that kind of gets into what happened then, what happened now, and the rules as to why it changes.
Yeah, and Chile, this is definitely not the first time we have seen something like this happen. I mean, authorities get tips and alerts about potential shooters, but still many of these attacks get carried out. It seems like history is repeating itself.
Right, indeed. Police across the state of Maine were alerted to threats by Robert Card. Authorities' radars had him as early as mid-September, and meanwhile, it's interesting. The FBI told the Associated Press that they weren't notified of anything. So there was a clear breakdown in communication here, something I continue to want to liken this to in terms of facts and how it plays out. The Parkland shooting back in 2018 down in South Florida. This is not the first time that warning signs have been missed. There were multiple interventions from agencies about Nicholas Cruz, the Parkland shooter's behavior. This is somebody who police had been called to his house over the years 23 times, 18 of those involving him, and yet no interventions. And also, Nick Cruz, again, this is somebody who was clearly troubled in the lead up to the shooting back in 2018. He purchased 7 rifles in a year between when that happened and when the Parkland shooting happened. So it goes to show you kind of the things that continue to get missed.
And Chile, there have been 5 mass shootings since the Lewiston one last week. I mean, the gun violence just continues. It has truly captivated the nation and the world for the past couple of days. But what is it going to result in any action from our government?
And that number continues to balloon, right? We mentioned it was 5 at the beginning of this weekend. Now it's bumped up per the Gun Violence Archive to 16. So it goes to show you that this is a problem that just continues to be an issue in our country right now. Fox Business reported the other day that gun sales actually spiked for some shops in the state per some gun store owners. Pew Research stats from last year show that 47%, nearly half of the state of Maine, the residents in the state of Maine, are gun owners. So this is something that's really kind of hard to change. But you do see representatives like Jared Golden from the state of Maine who said, you know, that he's reversing course a little bit, calling on an assault weapons ban, whereas he wasn't in support of that before. I think one of the most interesting things here, we don't have current polling yet, but we do have polling. CNN back in May of 2023, 64% of people said they favor stricter gun control laws, 36% oppose. The highest point ever for that poll, 2018, right after the Parkland shooting.
Yes, and Chile, we will continue to follow the government's response here on CitrusTV News. Thank you for joining us.
Well, Olivia, it's deja vu this fall. The countdown is on once again until a government shutdown, and newly minted Speaker Mike Johnson has a lot on his plate. Johnson has to keep the government open, handle emergency spending requests for Israel and Ukraine, and get the appropriations process back on track. Now, here with us to break that down is our very own Luke Radel. Luke, obviously a lot for Mike Johnson to get to right away. on his first couple days as the House Speaker. What's first on his agenda?
Well, the very first bill that he wanted to pass was actually something that he mentioned in his first speech on the House floor as Speaker this past Wednesday. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
The first bill that I'm going to bring to this floor in just a little while will be in support of our dear friend Israel, and we're overdue in getting that done.
Now, Jake, the day after he delivered that speech, Johnson told Sean Hannity of Fox News that funding to support Israel and Ukraine should be handled separately, which would go against the funding request that was made by President Biden during his Oval Office address. But we actually got a copy of the bill that Speaker Johnson is proposing on the House floor tonight. It's expected to come up for a vote later this week. It includes $14.3 billion in funding for Israel, which will actually be offset by a cut to IRS spending. We have a copy of the bill here, and we've been reviewing it all day long today. And it's interesting because that offset for IRS spending is actually going to be somewhat of a non-starter for Democrats. They want to see those tax laws enforced by our IRS agents.
You know, Luke, you mentioned President Biden. The two of him and Johnson, they met last week at the White House. Obviously quite ideologically different politicians. How are they going to work together?
It's going to be interesting to see how their relationship works out, given the fact that Johnson was one of the folks who voted to decertify Biden's 2020 election win based on false claims of voter fraud, claims that he amplified in radio interviews, saying things that were widely debunked about Dominion voting systems, for example. The New York Times referred to him as the architect of January 6th, so it's hard to imagine someone like that will have a strong working relationship with Biden. He's much more closely aligned with Trump than he is with the current president right now, so it'll be interesting to see how they're able to work together on these very important priorities.
The architect of January 6th, so interesting to see those two in the same room. But after those emergency requests are done and Johnson's immediate agenda is done, there's still those 12 annual spending bills that need to be passed. Is he going to be able to get those passed?
You know, it was difficult for McCarthy, a seasoned political operator with decades of experience as a politician, to get them done. So for a fourth-term congressman to do all that he has on his plate for the next couple of weeks. Right now, they've only passed about 5 of the 12 required annual spending bills, but this week they're expected to vote on spending that would affect the Environmental Protection Agency, the Housing Department, and the Department of Transportation. But Jake, the White House says they're going to veto those bills that will be on the floor because the cuts go beyond what was agreed to by McCarthy and Biden back in June. So unless they can find a way to work together across the aisle with Democrats in the Senate and the White House, I don't know if they'll be able to get a lot done.
Luke Radel, thank you so much. Next on Talking Points, Decision 2024. One candidate out, another one in. Find out why after the break. Stay with us.
Here's to the straggly ones. The lopsided ones. The first ones. The I miss my beard ones. But hey, I look good with this ones. But no way he's grown that in a week ones. The black, brown, red, and gray ones. The, that one. The itchy ones. The never forgotten ones. The ones grown by Dad. The ones grown for Dad. The started late ones. The absolutely filthy ones. The drawn on ones. The finger ones. The pin ones. The I nearly didn't do it this year ones. And the yeah, why not ones. They all raise awareness, raise funds, start conversations, and save lives. Because whatever you grow will save a bro. Learn more at Movember.com.
My name is Jenna Cooper, and I am the relationship psychologist.
My name is Paige Phillips. I am the astrologer, and this
is Psych vs. Stars.
I came here to say it's become clear to me. This is not my time. So after much prayer and deliberation, I have decided to suspend my campaign for president effective today.
That was former Vice President Mike Pence this past Saturday. Pence was at risk of missing out on the third GOP primary debate next week. He'd been struggling to gain traction in the polls and had trouble raising money since he announced his candidacy.
One candidate is out, another one is in. This time it's on the Democratic side of the ticket. Third-term Minnesota Congressman Dean Phillips has officially thrown his hat into the ring, challenging President Biden in the primary. He had been flirting with the possibility of it for the last few months. And here to break all of this down is Peter Barry. Peter, thanks for being here tonight. Let's start with the Pence news. Why the sudden dropout?
So there's going to be three main reasons why Pence is actually dropping out of this race. One you just mentioned, he failed to reach the donor quota, which is going to be roughly around 70,000 donors for the third GOP debate, which is going to happen on November 8th. But the second reason is he had $1.1 million in the bank for his campaign finances. But he also had $600,000 in debt. So he's not the wealthiest politician, but it's going to take years for him to actually pay back that debt. But again, as you said, he didn't have much traction in the polls, unlike his former boss, President Trump, who has 43% in the Iowa caucus polls. Pence was polling at single-digit numbers for the Iowa caucus polls, so he underestimated how disliked he would be from the Trump supporters.
And Peter, going back to the Iowa caucus like you were just mentioning, that is on January 15th. It is coming up. What can we expect to see?
So I want to pull up this poll graphic right now that Trump is having a commanding lead with 43%. But one thing on this poll that I found interesting is Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley are now tied in the Iowa caucus. Haley has been pumping up poll numbers in the New Hampshire polls as well, but it's going to be a big turnaround for all of these candidates, especially for Trump. He will be facing a lot of criminal proceedings during that time, and the New Hampshire primary is likely to be happening on January 23rd.
Interesting findings in that NBC poll, Peter. But now switching over to the Democratic ticket, Dean Phillips entering the race. A couple hiccups with his campaign launch last week. The website looking almost identical to Biden's campaign website. A couple hiccups with the actual announcement. Are we even going to entertain his bid? Does he have any chance here?
So, like Mike Johnson, most people did not know who Dean Phillips was last week. But the short answer is no, we shouldn't entertain his bid. It's going to be a long shot candidate. As you said, he's a third-term Democrat from Minnesota who's 54 years old, but he's really just there to tell everyone that Biden is super old. But he's now going to force the Biden campaign to spend more money on the New Hampshire primary than they wanted to do.
Peter, thank you. Election day in Onondaga County is next Tuesday, and the county executive position is up for grabs. Incumbent Ryan McMahon is running for re-election and is facing County Legislator Bill Kinney. Ronnie Perillo has the election preview for us.
Thanks, Olivia. Well, McMahon is touting his accomplishments over the last 5 years in office. Micron, tackling the COVID-19 pandemic, and new infrastructure in the county. But that's not enough for Democrat Bill Kinney to sit aside and let him run without a challenger.
The present county executive has a habit of acting like a dictator and not working with people.
Just last week, Kinney joined us live here in the CitrusTV studios to talk about his campaign. He's looking to be the first Democrat to ever hold the county executive seat, and he plans to do things differently than McMahon. He says communication with residents and the legislature is key for the job, something his opponent hasn't been good at.
Well, he controls who you talk to, and I don't like that. I should be able to talk to anyone I want. That's one thing. And when he doesn't get his way, he acts like a child.
In his attacks on McMahon, he also took shots at the deal made by state and county leaders with Micron. Now, that's slated to be the largest ever investment in the central New York economy, saying any county executive could have made the same $100 billion deal. McMahon says, though, it was not that simple.
This was a 4-year process. We, the county government, built out a site attraction team that included 2 different governors, because it started out with Governor Cuomo and ended with Governor Hochul, Senator Schumer, Congressman Katko.
And one topic that's not going swimmingly between the two candidates is that $85 million aquarium being built in Syracuse's Inner Harbor. Kinney says it's a massive mistake that will lose money year over year. McMahon says it's a key piece for attracting recreation to the county, and especially to a city that some say has passed its golden age.
And the aquarium is a piece of year-round entertainment infrastructure. It's going to have over a $52 million economic impact on a study that was pre-Micron. It's going to create jobs. It's going to allow us to redevelop the Inner Harbor.
And polls show Kinney facing an uphill battle against McMahon, but the only result that'll matter is on election night, which of course we will bring straight to you here on Citrus TV. Guys?
Ronnie, thank you. Tune into that Citrus TV election special next Tuesday night at 10 p.m. We'll have live reports and analysis. Also, tune in to Citrus TV News Live at 6 tomorrow for an exclusive interview. We'll chat in studio with Onondaga County Executive Ryan McMahon. You can watch tomorrow's interview live on OTN, X, and YouTube at 6 p.m. right here on Citrus TV.
It'll also be election night in Ohio, where a major abortion referendum is on the ballot. Find out how this could impact the U.S. in the post-Dobbs decision era. Stick with us.
Jason, let's go see your room.
What do you think? We kept it a little spare, so you can decorate it how you like.
Dinner! Go.
Excellent. Yeah, I saw you guys out there. We're the family. Yeah! Oh, I thought you were on my team. Wait.
Welcome to an excellent episode of Live from Studio B. Yeah.
Welcome back to Talking Points. Abortion rights are on the ballot next week in Ohio. The proposed amendment would lift the 6-week abortion ban reinstated when Roe v. Wade was overturned.
If passed, the amendment will legalize abortion past 6 weeks and give Ohioans the right to access contraception, fertility treatment, miscarriage care, among other rights. The amendment needs at least a 50% vote to pass.
And state election officials are expecting turnout to be a lot higher than its 2021 off-year voting totals.
More than 300,000 residents have casted a ballot as of last Tuesday. After a rule change, Ohioans need to vote in person this year.
You know, Olivia, I think this is going to be a very telling election of a national trend that we're seeing where Americans are shifting to being pro-choice. You can see that poll up on your screen. In Ohio, abortion rights, Democrats almost entirely in support of it. Republicans about half and half there. You could see a little bit less in support of it, but independents in high support of it. And we're starting to see that swing among independents. Gallup did a national poll this past summer where 52% of Americans polled said they were pro-choice. That's the first time in history. There has never been a poll where over half of Americans have said that they're pro-choice. Nationally, we also saw the referendum in Kansas last year after Roe v. Wade was overturned. Kansas, a red state, still voted to keep abortion legal, and I think this Ohio election is going to be very telling of that national trend.
Definitely, and it is not just Ohio where we are going to be looking for key elections that will decide abortion rights in this state. Now, Ohio has a referendum, but other states such as Virginia and Kentucky, this election based on who wins on the ballot will determine whether or not their abortion rights will be decided by the state or whether they will have the right to choose. I mean, this whole election nationally, not just in Ohio, is going to be very telling in 2024 how people are going to vote in terms of abortion.
Yeah, bringing it back to Ohio, another surprise even before the election, the Ohioans United for Reproductive Rights out-fundraised the Protect Women Ohio organization. So the pro-choice organization out-fundraised the pro-life organization by $20 million headed into this election. And I think that's also very telling of what we're going to see. We've seen a lot of very scandy ads, and Ohioans look like they're ready to vote. That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Talking Points. For everyone here at Citrus TV, I'm Jake Morel. Have a great night.
I'm Olivia Maniscalco.